Welcome to 15 Minutes of Consulting Best Practices. My name is Maria Isabel Rios. I'm here with David A. Fields. David, say hello.
Hello.
And, and welcome again. You know the drill probably by now. We take questions from you, we answer them. And for the last portion of today, we're going to go through rapid fire questions as well. So you may have type questions in the comments as we go, and that will be a good way to do it. To get us started today, and as Deidre pulls up our first question, where are you? Which country are you in?
Well, I'm in the U.S., but I think you mean everybody else too. So
Exactly.
type in the comments where you are, so we know whether you're going to be celebrating 4th of July tomorrow, or you're just going to be having a regular 4th of July tomorrow.
Exactly.
All right. Sorry, Deidre. What's the first question?
Here you go. All right. David, what do you tell a potential client that has a negative opinion of the world consulting or had a bad experience with one? I've had a few leads, particularly in tech, that soured on that particular world.
Okay. I shouldn't say that's funny, but that's kind of funny. So yeah, I mean, you do run into people who have had bad experiences with consultants. I mean, I'm sure Marisa, but you have. I know I have, and a little bit how you deal with that depends kind of where you are in the process of it. However, so a couple of thoughts. If someone is basically distrustful of consultants, I would acknowledge it. I'd say, yeah, consultants kind of bite. I mean, a lot of consultants unfortunately do bad work, and that makes things hard. So let's talk about what your concerns are. That's probably the most straightforward way at it, and what I would typically recommend. If I go back probably 20 years now, we had a client that we actually called ourselves an agency for, because it just made it easier to go through procurement, because they had certain rules around consultants. And so our decision makers said, can you call yourselves an agency? Is like, you bet. I don't know. What do you think, Marie-Isabel? Yay,
I think
nay?
so. Ultimately, you want to get to the heart of you had negative experience. What were they? The point of reassurance is that if you can and you will provide an experience that it's different than the experience they had before, then you should absolutely advocate that we are all different and as diverse as our nationalities, and what they should expect from you, the first and how.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I don't think you say, oh, well, other consultants are bad, but we're good, because that doesn't make you believable. It's just, what are your concerns? Let's talk about how we address it and give you the best chance of success. All right, let's keep rocking and rolling. And by the way, if you have had that situation, or you have a question related to that, even remotely, type it in the comments.
Second question, Deidre, please.
Let's see. So let's see. I'll do this one at you. We'll see what happens. For a retainer agreement, do I need to set just one quarterly rate for all of my clients? Some clients will tap me much more than others, and even more importantly, their budget for advisory support varies widely. All right, so Marie-Isabel, what do you think? Does this consultant, does Allison need to use the same fees for quarterly, sounds like advisory engagements for every client, or can she vary it?
Well, the answer for me is it depends. If what you are doing with the client and the nature of your advisory support is the same, meaning you're supporting the same number of folks with the same commitments, the dynamic between the two of you works the same, and the size of the organization and the breadth of your engagement is the same, then yes, we in general will advocate to set the same sets of fees. It also makes it fair. It creates transparency between folks in your community that may know each other. However, if the nature of your advisory services is different by virtue of having, including different elements, perhaps your responsiveness is higher or lower, and it's something you can modulate, or the number of folks you work with, it's higher or lower, and you can modulate that as well, then that requires a different setup in terms of fees. That would be my thought. David,
Okay.
what do you think?
Well, so let me ask you a question. No, not push back, but let me just ask a question. So what if one client is a $10 million company, right? So you're going to be an advisor for the CEO of a $10 million company. And another, you get the similarly same sort of setup, but now you're talking with the CEO of a $10 billion company. So I skipped a few orders of magnitude.
Right.
Do the fees have to be the same for the $10 million company as a $10 billion company?
I find it very hard to believe that you're supporting the two CEOs in exactly the same way, right? So it all for me boils down not only how much value are they getting out of your advice, and that's where a question of tiers can come in,
Yeah.
but also what does the CEO of a $10 billion company or a $100 billion company, your highest point of reference, will need from you in terms of advisory versus the other CEO. And I find it hard to believe that you're advising them exactly in the same way.
Yeah.
What's your thought?
Well, so you
Disagree.
said, well, I agree. And you mentioned tiers. And that does make me think, I think it is fair to have some tiers as long as there's clear and as long as there's some rationale behind the value being different. So two thoughts, and then we'll go to the next question. One is we have an article on the site somewhere which lists 8 or 10 factors to look at when you're setting the fees for these types of engagements. If we can find that, we'll post that on LinkedIn afterward. Or we've had clients post them. So if you know what article it is, just post it on there. And the other is, I do think if you've got a $10 million and a $1 billion, you can say, look, for all our clients under $100 million, here's our fee structure. Right. For clients that are over $100 million, we do have a different fee structure. The value we're creating is greater because your ability to use our advice to create value is greater. I just wouldn't I wouldn't be doing every client differently, which is what you said, Maria Isabel. I agree completely. All right, let's see. Deidre, what do we got? Tee us up.
In addition to building assets, frameworks, etc., how does one transition from project work to advisory services, David? And this question is from Adam. Thank you, Adam.
We did a whole webinar on this just a week or two ago for the Umbrex Veritux crowd, and it is there. That is accessible. People can watch that on our site. I think it's davidafields.com/retainer. And you can watch that whole thing. So we've talked about that recently, and I would say just jump in there. However, the short version is the way you transition is by first thinking about whether it would be helpful. I mean, you don't want to go into a project structure that's not helpful for your client. That would be upside down. So if it's legitimately going to be helpful for your client to have an advisory engagement, then you can approach them and say, hey, Maria Isabel, what do you think? Would it make sense for you? Would it be valuable to create some sort of relationship where you can just call on me and my team for advice? That's it. Easy as that. What do you think? Yay, nay? Would that work for you, Maria Isabel, or no?
Completely agree. And I think for some clients, depending on the type of work you do, you may naturally come to a stage in which you've done 2, 3 projects or even one project, and the next layer of support as the client team starts driving more is to provide some form of advisory. But it's always driven by what would benefit the client the most and what will also stabilize the way you work together around a project.
Right. Exactly right. All right. Hey, let's try transitioning to this rapid fire that we never know whether it's going to work because I don't know what questions are coming up. And again, if you have comments, type them. It's possible you're typing comments and we don't see them, or it's possible no one's saying anything yet today. You just never know with LinkedIn Live. So Deidre, we're going to try rapid fire. I'll read the next one. It's on you, Maria Isabel. We'll see what happens. So Deidre, what's the next question? When a lead tells you to call them and you do and leave a message and they don't call you back, what's the etiquette for follow-up? Obviously, I have more urgency than they do, says Brad. Okay, Brad, Maria Isabel, what's the answer?
Brad, not an uncommon problem, right? Or a situation to have. Things happen. People get distracted, something comes up. Rapid fire answer to this question without nuances is drop a line. Said, called you and I missed you. Do we need to reschedule? Did something come up? And get that conversation going. David, what do you add to that?
Yeah, perfect. Call, dude. Do we need to reschedule? Easy as that. I agree. Let's do the next one.
All right. What is an industry price range value for unlimited access for support and advisory? All right. So we were talking about support advisory engagements. And now what is a price range and value, David?
Oh
What
my
do you
gosh,
think?
what a crazy question to try to answer rapid fire. Okay, so we have seen engagements, advisory engagements run from $500 for a month to $400K for a year. And so it's pretty darn broad. I don't know if there's a standard. I would think most common is somewhere between what ends up being 2,500 a month and maybe 15K a month. Most of our clients who do advisory engagements are somewhere in that range, though we don't recommend charging monthly, but 25 to 15,000, 2,500 to 15,000 a month. There you go. That's my rapid fire response.
There you go.
Deidre, let's do another one. Let's see how we do. How do we set priorities at the beginning of a coaching engagement? All right, Dan.
Can I take this one?
Answer.
All right. So, how do you set priorities? The same way you would in terms of any other engagement, meaning you do an assessment first. And you do that assessment collaboratively because if you're coaching, right? So, it's important to identify one, where are the gaps? Two, where are the priorities? And agree with your client. Which priorities and which gaps are you going to focus on independently of coaching, and which priorities and gaps are we going to work on together? We usually recommend setting a top 3 priorities, right, to work on, and have them clear. What is number 1, what is number 2, and what is number 3, so you can focus your work. That's how I would do it. David, how do you do it?
Yeah, 100% agree. Obviously, we do that with our clients. We're big believers that, and some sort of assessment up front does a couple of things. One, it creates some boundaries around it, so you know where you're headed. It lets the client know that you're not making this up on the fly. You actually have some rigor, some methodology, and so if you use that in combination with, as you said, whatever the client's priorities are, that should get you in the right place to begin with.
Exactly. Make focus.
All right. Should we try for one more?
Focus on adding value, of course. And you will be in the hot seat for this one. So, Deidre, can we please have the next question? Okay. How do I get my EA to step up when she makes mistakes? When I ask her what would help, she just says, I don't know. And this question is from Dan. Thank you, Dan.
Oh my gosh, that's so hysterical. So that's like you ask your young child, well, how did the lamp get broken? I don't know. So if your EAs, if you're asking for your EA for help,
sometimes people think they don't know.
Yeah, that is true. You're asking your EA for help, and she or he gives a response. Well, I don't know. I don't know how to help. Well, but that's not an answer, and that's what I would say. So that's not an answer. All that means is you haven't actually thought about it. Take a minute. We'll pause together and think about it. What could you do?
Right.
You know, I think that as consultants, we are such problem solvers that when we see a problem, 2 things. One, we expect other people to be problem solvers also. So we expect them to just naturally be able to jump in. And we don't pause and give others who are not as practiced at problem solving the opportunity to, step up.
Learn by doing.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. It's also fair that some folks may need a framework on how to think about it. Because as you said, not everybody has been trained or exposed to problem solving right on a daily basis.
Exactly right.
So in addition to what you're saying, the suggestion is perhaps to give them a point of reference, to say, think about what worked, think about what didn't work, and based on that, what do you need to do differently? Yep. And if folks said, I recognize I have a gap, I don't quite know what tools are available for that, that's an acceptable starting point as well.
It is. And on that, we're going to leave you because I think we've gone past the 14 mark, maybe in the 15-minute mark. So let me give you 3 quick requests. First, if you're not connected to me on LinkedIn, connect to me. Deidre has put the information there. If you're not connected to Maria Isabel, please connect to Maria Isabel. We'd like to be connected with you on LinkedIn. Second, if you're not subscribed to our weekly articles, please subscribe. if for no other reason than to make fun of the illustrations, but there's pretty good content in there. And if you haven't visited the articles, do that. And finally, make sure you submit questions for next week. We get lots of questions pouring in. There may have been questions today we couldn't see. Send them to info@davidafields.com or Maria Isabel or me. Though Maria Isabel's going on vacation. So good for you, Maria Isabel. It'll be just me for the next couple of weeks. Thank you all for being here. Have a fabulous week. Remember, consulting is about them, not us. It's about them. So give your clients value and give them kindness. And I'll see you next week.